welcome to the Legal Eagle. Joining us this week is former Additional Solicitor General, Senior Advocate in the Supreme Court, one of the most pleasing, gracious personalities who walks on the corridors of the top court of the country, Mr. Neeraj Kishan Kaul. Mr. Kaul, as we welcome you on the Legal Eagle, my first question is going to be about how you've risen. In the 1980s, you joined the legal practice. You did your schooling, you did your education in the capital, after which you went to Cambridge. In the 1980s, you started your law practice, and after which it was at 38 that you became a senior advocate. You're known to be extremely meticulous, extremely thorough when you take on a brief. So, Mr. Kaul, I want to ask you about the impactful milestones in your legal career.
Well, there have been many impactful milestones. I had the privilege of joining the chambers of the late Justice Arun Kumar, as he then was, who was an absolutely fabulous senior who guided me through my initial years, and then he became a judge of the Delhi High Court. And then I worked with my elder brother for a while and then charted my own course as we went along. And I think very early I had decided that I wanted to be an arguing counsel. And that was quite a decision in those days because I was about 32 and I decided I just wanted to do the arguing counsel's work and not draft. Now, that's a culture which is prevalent in Bombay, Calcutta, but wasn't prevalent in Delhi in those days especially. So for a youngster at 32 to give up his drafting, there were, of course, instances. Mr. Salve had done it, Mr. Subramaniam had done it earlier, and some more. But there were not many cases. So, you were a bit diffident and not sure whether you were doing the right thing. But I knew I had to be an arguing counsel. So that was the first milestone where I decided that I just wanted to do arguing practice. And at 32, I remember Pallavi Shroff from Amarchand Mangaldas gave me my first outstation brief as a counsel. And that was a matter of great thrill and encouragement at that stage. And as one went along, Mr. Jaitley at some stage was very kind enough to offer me the standing counselship for the central government in the Delhi High Court. That was another milestone in my life, and he was very kind, mentored us, guided us. Then came my designation at the age of 38, which was a huge milestone because really then you graduate to a different kind of litigation. And many other important matters in themselves and opportunities were milestones, but then came ASG-ship in 2014, which was again a milestone. And as I said, these were the ones I could highlight, but there are many cases, there are many instances which had defining moments in a person's career, but these were really some very important moments in my professional career.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, I was about to come to that in 2014 when you had become, in the Modi government, you'd become an ASG. We often saw you taking on the government briefs, Mr. Kaul. You're always someone who's known to be a champion of fundamental rights, someone who's always championed constitutional matters. You're often seen in very important matters that are going to make a landmark law of the land. I also want to ask you, before I go on to other matters where I discuss about you, about your lineage, and I also ask you other questions about how you treat your juniors, about a fundamental question that's arisen in India today, which has to do with freedom of speech and expression. In the past 6 months, I would say, Mr. Kaul, we've seen certain state governments in certain states persecute certain channels, certain individuals, and try and persecute them only for trying to give out a narrative that doesn't suit them. What would your message to the governments in such states be, keeping in mind the freedom of speech and expression that's enshrined in our constitution?
Sadly, I don't think this is a phenomenon of just the last 6 months. I think since the 70s, I have seen that wherever any government has the kind of majority or absolute majority or a comfortable majority, I have seen successive governments cutting across party lines misuse the enforcement agencies, misuse the agencies of the state, and unleashing, so to say, the might of the state on people they don't agree with. It can be the CBI, it can be the ED, it could be other cases, frivolous, otherwise all kinds of trivial issues converted into criminal cases. And yes, you're right, very often it's taken on the color of an onslaught on freedom of speech as well. And I would emphasize this again, that this cuts across party lines, and that's what makes it sad, because the framers of the Indian Constitution put freedom of speech on such a high pedestal. It's one of the most sacrosanct and important rights for a healthy, vibrant democracy. And yes, you're right, there have been cases of onslaughts on channels, on journalists in various states, and it's unfortunate, and I think it needs to be curbed, and the courts will have to play an important and strong role in that direction.
In fact, Mr. Kaul, from this question, I remember Justice Chandrachud's recent judgment in which he spoke about criminal law, and he said the doors of the Supreme Court are always open when criminal law is being used as an instrumentality and is being wrongly used to target innocent citizens. This is the very ethos on which India rests, is the very ethos on which any criminal law of any system and any judiciary should be resting. But the persecution by states continue. So what is one message that has to go across at such times to any state, whether it's Bengal, whether it's Maharashtra?
I think, and to many more states, not just these two states, the message that has to go is that you have to keep your enforcement agencies completely free, not as caged parrots. Secondly, merely because channels and journalists say things which don't suit you, you don't unleash the might of the state and terrorize them. Freedom of speech is integral to a vibrant democracy. Let it flourish, let it prosper, because that is where democracy will really flower. And if you start going after journalists, channels, just because they espouse views which are contrary to yours or inconvenient to you, that can be the death knell of democracy.
Yes, and I also want to, on this note, also ask you about your own, Mr. Kaul, you come from a royal lineage. There would hardly be any lawyer in the country who would be having the heritage or could match the heritage that you come from. It tracks over 500 years. Your great-grandfather, Raja Sir Daya Kishan Kaul, who became the Prime Minister of Kashmir, and then your own father, Manmohan Kishan Kaul, who was an eminent lawyer. You also were an ASG. You've seen how the judiciary is functioning. Over the years, over the decades, we've seen a lot of people talk about destabilization of the judiciary. So two questions here, Mr. Kaul. Do you think there is corruption within the judiciary? Do you think there's a certain lobby that's trying to destabilize the judiciary for their own motivated purposes?
You know, when it comes to onslaught on the judiciary, I have seen onslaughts on judiciary from the 70s onwards. This is not a new phenomenon. There have been onslaughts on the judiciary right through. And not one, on many occasions, and again successive governments. As far as corruption is concerned, I can't say there is none, but I think very often it's overstated as well, because there are outstanding judges doing outstanding work in this country, but then they're also part of the same society. So corruption in general in society is a problem, and I can't say that the judiciary is completely away from it. There have been instances, there have been problem areas, but I would still maintain that an overwhelming number of judges do their job in the country with great distinction and diligence. As far as the lobbies you're talking about, yes, there are lobbies to whom, if convenient decisions are not given, they can make scandalous statements, they can scandalize the judiciary, they can make very irresponsible statements about the judiciary as well. And that lobby has over the years prospered, there's no doubt about it. Having said that, I think fair criticism of the judiciary and pointing out to the judiciary where they're going wrong has to be also accepted and has to be encouraged. Judiciary must be open to constructive criticism, being pointed out where they're going wrong, and transparent, not opaque, and should be open to correction and to listen to constructive criticism.
Yes, and very valid point, Mr. Kaul. Mr. Kaul, I also want to ask you, you've been a part of some very important judgments, some very important cases, whether it's the Ayodhya case where you appeared before Justice Nariman, whether it's the Aadhaar cases. How impactful, which are the cases that you feel have left an impact on you? And I would like you to share some anecdotes from these cases that could have left an impact on you, sir.
You know, let me tell you that very often, what leaves an impact in a lawyer's life, a case, is not necessarily a case which sees headlines or which is a famous case. Very often, it's small instances of individuals that you don't even know about, which leaves a much greater impact. I remember as a young lawyer at one stage, in the High Court, I was appointed as the amicus to assist the court for a girl who had lost her parents and they had left her an estate. So who would manage that estate? Who would look after the girl? Who would be her guardian? How do we rehabilitate her when she attains adulthood? How is the estate to be vested in her? It was a very interesting and challenging case at that stage. In another case, let me give you an instance. I appeared for a gentleman who had been detained under preventive detention and had been behind bars for about 2 years and had repeatedly failed in his attempts to get a bail. Ultimately, I argued for him. The matter went on for about 2.5 hours. And finally, we were fortunate enough that man was released on bail by the Delhi High Court. And when I came out, his sister just held my hand and his wife put her head on my shoulder and they both just sobbed and sobbed for the next 10 minutes. I think it was one of the most moving moments in my life as an individual, as a lawyer. And in this country, we must remember, we treat personal liberty very casually at times. I think we end up locking up people, arresting people at the drop of a hat. And I've always been a votary that short of heinous crimes or where you really need someone for custodial interrogation, ordinarily this whole business of locking up people, even before a judgment, a trial is over, is a practice which should be discouraged. So it's really these matters. Of course, the CBI prosecution case that I argued in the Ayodhya matter, the Aadhaar, where I appeared for some of the private parties who were supporting Aadhaar. There are matters of recently of the constitutional amendment being carried out to the Arbitration Act, effectively to overrule a judgment of the Supreme Court where we succeeded in the Supreme Court. Those are, of course, matters of great satisfaction and importance, which catch the eye, which are reported. But what I'm trying to emphasize is very often in the life of a lawyer, it's the not so significant matters which actually have a much more significant impact because they really deeply touch the lives of individuals.
Yes, and Mr. Kaul, you've often, whenever we speak about you, we always hear that you're very thorough with your briefs and very encouraging to your juniors. So what is a normal day in your life like? When does it begin? When does it end? How long do you take to be reading your briefs? How does that day proceed?
So, to be honest, if you were to ask my juniors, they'd say he's a tyrant. So I think you're being very, very kind to me. But I think my day begins rather early. I start reading my briefs at about 6:30 in the morning. And that goes on till about 9:15. Then I get ready and I reach court by about 10:30 or 10:15. And then I'm there till whenever my matters are in the Supreme Court or in the High Court. And normally till about 4:15, come back, start conferences at about 5, which last till about 9. And then dinner with the family, back to bed, and up early in the morning with a cup of coffee and reading my briefs. That's pretty much the routine. I've been very fortunate, I think, to have been blessed for many, many years now with some outstanding chamber colleagues who have worked with me, who've come, gone, they all come and go. And as a parent, there is a bit of sadness in you when they fly away, but at the same time, you're very proud that they're going out charting their own course. And I've been very, very fortunate to have had some outstanding juniors in my chamber, great lawyers, great human beings, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I must tell you, the philosophy behind this has been, and I've always wanted to keep as many juniors, give them an opportunity as this, and especially the first generation ones, is that when a youngster joins the bar, he's completely at sea. He has no identity. There's confusion, there's chaos in the courts. You're running between courts. Seniors can be short-tempered. You can be scolded in court. So he really doesn't know, and especially a first-generation lawyer. A smile, a warm smile, a brief chat with him gives him or her at least a sense of some identity, some belonging. And I think every senior, and this profession has been very kind to us, very, very kind to us. I think every senior owes a duty, a bounden duty to the profession to reach out, help, nurture a set of youngsters at a given point of time, hold their hand, and then lead them to the ocean, the vast ocean of knowledge that is law. That is a bounden duty of every senior, and they must follow that.
That's very profound. Mr. Kaul, for the last question, I will just request my camera person, he'll put another seat. We'll also have Vatsala Kaul joining us for that last answer, and then we shall proceed with it. Viewers, also on the Legal, we have Mrs. Neeraj Kishan Kaul. Mrs. Vatsala Kaul, who's always been alongside him and always graciously been there. Mrs. Kaul and Mr. Kaul, I wanted to ask you a question because I've often seen both of you together with your juniors, and we're always talking about it in the courts because everybody's envious. You go on these holidays with your juniors. It's like one big family. How do you see this, and what is the basic motto behind this? Because it's always united. All of you are standing united, and we always see this as someone who's always going to be winning because the entire family, the entire core team of the chamber is together on holidays.
Yes, that's true. In fact, it's really funny from the beginning. Neeraj has been very involved with with this whole chamber, and he used to make sure that when they come here, they've got something to eat because they used to work very long hours. So it became like a family, and even, I also came to know them. And this, as we spent more time with each other, we tended to go on holidays, and then it became even better and better. We came to know each other much better, and we had some really fun times together. And so it's just, I think it's just been a very mutually...
And just to add to that, I don't know about the juniors, but we've thoroughly enjoyed traveling with them. And, of course, there's a great bond in the chamber when we work. But when we go out, we let our hair down. I can't use that. I shouldn't be saying that. But yes, the rest let their hair down. And we've had such fabulous times. And, you remain connected with a different generation. Their thoughts, their ideas, their aspirations, the way they view the world. It's so refreshing. And we've had some great times together.
Real fun times.
Real fun times together.
That's true.
Mrs. Kaul, then the final word on this to you. He's someone who's working very hard. He's extremely meticulous as a senior advocate. He's someone who's always on the job. How is it? When does he have time for the family? What are the rare times that both of you and all of you as a family gets together?
Well, let me tell you, he's very meticulous at work. But his greatest, I think, I would say something which he's really good at is time management. His time management is fantastic. He makes time for... He used to make time for his parents. Now he's just his mother. But, for all of us, for the children, when he comes back, he asks for them, where are they, what are they doing? He would ask us what we've been doing. We talk to each other, and then he goes and attends his conferences and so on. In the night, sometimes we used to go out, there were evenings out. We used to spend time together. So he's been very good, I must say. Even there might be times when he's been really working long hours. But by and large, he managed his time very well in the day. So he could do his work as well as attend to the family. So I think that way, I think his time management is fantastic. Really very good. Very, very fast. He decides and he delegates. He starts his day very early. And so I think he just manages. He seems to manage very well. I don't know. But it's an art. It's not something which everybody could do, yes, very easily.
It's Mr. Kaul, it's lovely to have this interview with you because at the end, the final sense we get, other than the personal side that we've also found out about today, is how the judiciary always needs to be upheld, the powers of the judiciary, and like you spoke about the freedom of expression, all this that's enshrined in the Constitution, always everybody needs to remember this, especially like you mentioned, also the state governments. I thank you both for being with us on the Legal. It's been a pleasure to be with Mr. Kaul, and also, like I said, and I started off by saying, one of the most pleasing personalities to see in the top court. Viewers, we see you next week. Thank you for being on the Legal.